Good evening. Welcome to a webinar with the founding partners of Emotionally for BW Wellbeing of BW Business World. Today, we will discuss what Emotionally is all about and how it is beneficial to mankind. My first question will go to all of you. I'll start with Dr. Roma Kumar. Uh, I would like to ask all of you how, in the last 17 months, have your personal and professional lives been during this pandemic?
So as soon as the lockdown came in, my professional work, of course, which was majorly face to face, almost went away. And right at that time was the time that we at Emotionally, all of us co-founders and partners, began this company. So we began with the telecounseling bit of it, and that's how the professional life went on until with breaks, the hospitals would open up or my face-to-face counseling would open up. But at Emotionally, we had been doing a lot of work with clients, majorly on the online platform through telecounseling or through webinars and talk shows. So that is how it went. Well, my personal life, I've never been working from home. So this is the first opportunity that, what I would say, I was forced to be at home and work from home. And I've learned many more new things work from home area. And I've also trained myself with all the gadgets and all the digital stuff, which, as for my training, I was not very well trained on that. So that goes with my personal life. And yes, if you've been working from home, and it has been quite taxing, especially dealing with clients through teletherapy, telecounseling, whether audio or visual, it has been quite taxing. And it I was taking care of areas from various part of the world, so there was no time which was kept aside, and so there was a lot of mingling of personal life and professional life. That's what I would say I was going through.
Okay, Miss Bilani, next, you're next, ma'am.
You know, the last, I think, 16, 17 months have really taught me a lot about myself as a person, both professionally and, personally. Because, I've had an experience of working flexibly, working from home when I worked in the US. And this was after the dot-com bust. But it was nothing like this because there was no restriction. I mean, you could go out of the house, you could go work from a cafe or something like that. But this was being by myself, making sure I'm productive, because it's very easy to lose sight of work and get distracted with many other things. So this was about really putting a structure in my day, like putting some boundaries and really making things work. So, that started out to be a big challenge because, we were also without any help at home. So, it is very easy to just sort of get distracted by what you have to do at home versus working. So that was one very big challenge that I went through personally, but came out of it and really tried to, bring my productivity, sort of harness it and bring it back. I went through COVID very early on, so that caused last year in May. So that sort of also made me realize that this is something that one needs to be very serious about. And so a lot of energy went that time in really managing, because we were a few of us that got COVID at home, and we had a critical situation as well. So it was all about really making things work professionally as well as doing that personally. Also, I think what really happened was that I'm on 6 boards now, 7. Basically, what happened was that the board work increased significantly. Board calls started increasing, board intervention started increasing, and every company that I'm on the board of is different. So the challenges were very different. So the professional side sort of became really, really busy with all the boards and all the management of these companies really coming in, asking for a lot of help, advice. Lots and lots of board calls happened. So that was a different aspect altogether, because so far boards have been, once a quarter, and life goes on. But this was like practically every other day that you were on calls. And then we started Emotionally. which was a very, very different world for us because, we have never really met each other together as a team. And so starting a company like this with, in absolutely virtual environment was a very new experience. So that's how I would say pretty much my life changed in these 16, 17 months.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pulani. Okay, ma'am. So,
Yeah.
what does emotionally do basically?
So,
So,
sorry, Roma, please go on.
Anita, you can continue.
We'll both share what
Yes.
emotionally does. So, emotionally really came about, uh, as you see from our profiles, all of us are 30 plus years of work experience, right? I mean, so we've had long careers, we've done various roles. And when we really thought about what was happening in the corporate world and with the new, the millennials and the younger generation, we felt that um, as a collective, all the corporates, if you really look outside, people really don't pay attention to mental health as much as they do to physical health. And a lot of times we are seeing that companies will do some kind of interventions, but they are not thinking about this on a very strategic level. And this is causing huge amounts of productivity loss in companies. So when we started talking to each other, we felt that this was something that we wanted to really do something about. It's more like giving back to the world where we grew up in terms of the corporates. Like how can we really support the corporate world where we have gained so much in helping companies really deal with some of these issues. So what emotionally really does is it helps organizations as we see now, it helps organizations really manage the emotional health of its employees. So we provide very, very structured counseling therapy services. We provide we provide emotional health literacy programs where we are really helping employees that participate in these programs, give them tools and tips and real case studies and examples on how to really harness and manage their own emotional health. It could be about stress, anxiety, depression, resilience, looking forward. And also we do a program for organizations which is called the Emotional Health First Aid Program. And in this program, what we are doing is we are helping HR and leaders in companies to really be the first level of service providers as far as emotional health challenges of employees are concerned. So how do you identify those signs and what kind of support can you give? And so we do a very intense program in that. Besides this, we also run assessments for the companies so that they know baseline what is really affecting the employees in the organization, so that the programs that they then implement are structured according to that. So it's not just like shooting in the dark and saying, okay, let's do some emotional health programs for our employees, but it's about really targeting based on whatever information comes out of those assessments.
Mr. Bose, sir, so how have your 17 months been personally and professionally?
Well, personally, I think I've worked from home for many years now, 2005. So working from home wasn't a big challenge. But the one significant life challenge was after living long years in Mumbai, I shifted to a rural place called Alibag. So as a city boy, I left a big city and moved here, which is very, very nice. And I think the sense of loss has always been the sense of freedom, that you're restricted on travel and restricted on going out. So that has been a big challenge for me because I have always had a lot of travel every year, both for work and personal side. And then after we found it emotionally, actually it has been a crazy busy time. As you can understand, it's a startup. So therefore it has been sometimes, 10 hours a day work. And the interesting thing about emotional is all the four founders here actually have not met physically with each other. Lina, Anita, and I have met. We haven't met Roma as yet physically. We've only seen virtually. And then many of our employees we haven't met as yet. So they're spread all over. So it's been interesting challenges to learn how to do things a different way. But I think we have coped well. the other thing I would like to share with you, we have a partners meeting at 9:30 every morning. And it's, I think, now about, I guess, about 65 weeks that most days of the week we have always met and discussed, and we've continued. So that's been actually been quite good fun, apart from the restrictions of lockdown and things like that.
Thank you, sir. Miss Bilka, after your turn, please.
Yeah. So I think on a personal basis, I would say that, we moved to Alibag, and we just moved for a week, 10 days. Who thought, that these were going to be the times. I mean, we never ever encountered anything, never heard of this in our life. So it was like, we just said, let's go to our country home for a week, 10 days. And here we arrived, with sort of minimal baggage and, place that we've always used only over the weekend. And suddenly we got really stuck here. I think on a personal basis, the other thing that was very upsetting for me was basically that my mother, who was sort of bedridden, was in Mumbai, and I couldn't go to visit her. And that was like quite heartbreaking, and she subsequently passed away this year. So not due to COVID, but old age. And so that was quite trying, although the Panchayat people here were very kind, and they said, well, if you leave in the morning, after the first couple of minutes, leave in the morning and you come back in the evening, on the same day within so many hours. So, after a couple of months, we sort of started doing this. So that made me feel a bit better. It was something that we weren't sort of prepared for at all. And we just coped. I think we just had to sort of learn that we actually had to start working totally. Everybody was working from home. So it was not just about yourself. It was like encompassing everyone else as well. And so, I mean, it was interesting. It was a different thing. We learned to cope, we learned to manage, and of course we set up emotionally, and that got us very busy. But I've worked part from home and part from the office for many years. And I work internationally as well. So I'm used to running sessions internationally, but those were the days where we just did sort of WebEx and things like that. And now suddenly there were so many mediums, and every company had its new, and I'm not a tech person. So that was quite a big challenge for me. So, running it all over the world, running it all over India, somebody wanted blue jeans and someone wanted MS Teams and someone wanted something else. I think we can, all of us from here, I think almost write a book on this. So it's been like a sort of a mixed bag. Yes, rural India is beautiful. You have large houses and you have lovely gardens, you get the birds and the flowers and things like that. But you miss the buzz. And I go up and down to Mumbai all the time. I realize that there's no real buzz. The kind of buzz I was talking about is like people just sort of, they go out, even though things have started opening up, people go out to walk and come running back home. So that bit, so from that perspective, one doesn't miss so much when you're in a sort of rural area. But definitely the world is in a kind of a odd spot. And nobody knows, it's so uncertain. No one really knows what's going to happen. And I think that's keeping us all also fairly uncertain. From a work perspective, emotionally picked up, and we trained nearly over 7,000 clients, I would say, this time. So it's been very satisfying. You managed to reach out to so many people. You managed to make a difference in people's lives. And I would say over 7,000 people. So it's, it's been quite interesting. The rest you heard from all the other partners.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. So, Dr. Kumar, can you tell us what you're doing to promote mental health literacy via your digital webinars?
Well, I would say that, there's a lot of stigma still attached to emotional health. And people are actually very hesitant to admit and speak up. So, here through emotionally, we tried to create some kind of a culture through where emotional health is considered as important as physical health. And we tried to do that through the digital stuff. And the emotional health is a multi-year long-term journey. In the short term, companies need to address immediate issues. So like we did a lot of sustainable work with them, where we were giving them options of the through webinars connecting to their employees, giving them an option of a helpline that we've created, where the companies would sign up with us, and those companies could use our helplines, where we had dedicated counselors and they would be addressing their issues. So that is one area we have actually been able to do. And emotional health issues, we also saw that cannot be segregated from the employee and the family. So a lot of companies also came forward with giving help to their their the families along with the employees. So this created a this actually helped us create an emotionally healthy organization. And most companies did extend emotional health support to families as well. And I would like to ask Amit to also pitch in and talk about this part.
One of our philosophies is that I think we want to do two things, right? One is we want to keep people emotionally fit. Okay. Just like people, I think in the last 15, 20 years, people got physically fit. A lot more people went to the gyms, a lot more people started running. So therefore, one of our objectives is to keep people emotionally fit. And then there's, of course, cure. Those who are suffering from deep anxiety or depression things, they need cure, right? So we want to do both. Now, our digital, our what we call emotional health master classes, basically train people how to take care of themselves. Apart from raising awareness about emotional health and fitness, like we teach people how to do self-care. What do you do when you have anxiety? What do you do when you have a lot of worry or fear? Things like that. And we have now created a huge suite of programs which we deliver to both corporates and to the public. And we are very pleased to say that it has been, we've got feedback that has benefited a lot of people. They've learned how to lead a more emotionally healthy life, especially in these circumstances, which has been quite difficult, right? So that's what we do through our digital in the master classes. And maybe Leena and Anita can chip in and add a few words to that.
And I think one of the big challenges also has been, this working from home. So while we've been talking, the emotional challenges and the mental health challenges also from, people who are actually, they're working this, sharing this common space, what's happening to relationships. People are feeling a little isolated from the work environment. There's no more those, those coffee chats or those water cooler chats, so that personal touch. So, and then what's happening is that the companies are just, you're anyway working from home. So you carry on the whole day, there's sort of no boundaries between personal life and professional life. So in fact, one of our clients was saying the other day at one of our sessions, they were in fact they turned around and said, well, I asked for leave. And they said, no, but anyway, you're working from home. So, like, chutti ki kya zarurat hai kind of a thing. I mean, it's amazing. Working from home and is the same as working from the office. And you should respect the boundaries and the timings and everything like that. But, so this has taken its toll. I mean, initially, I think people just didn't know how to go about it. Then people learned how to navigate it. Companies learned how to navigate it. And then started giving people work, and people initially didn't know what else to do. So I think they took it on unknowingly, kept on working till they realized, man, I'm working till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, there's no boundaries. And then children, attending schools. We have our clients, their online schooling is going on at the same time as work hours. So people need help in all those areas. And that's been causing a lot of anxiety. Who's going to do the meals? How are we going to organize the groceries? So this has caused anxiety. This has caused stress. So, I'm not just saying stress and anxiety just coming from only X place. It's the whole gamut of what has happened, which is sort of, caused all this. So we work in all these kind of areas as well. As I say, children. We're talking to children. Dr. Roma Kumar will bear me out on that. I mean, kids can't go out and play. They can't play with their playmates. How are they going to function? So all these things, and it's just their parents, they don't know how to, all your time you spend on keeping your children away from TVs and computers. And now you're telling children, hey, sit in front of this only for your schoolwork or something. So they've lost out on a lot of their childhood. And we're seeing a lot of sort of issues coming up there as well. So yeah, we've been sort of treating this. What we've noticed in corporates, Kavi, now that you mention it, what we notice in corporates is that corporates are trying, they are working. Obviously, it's very difficult to take out this amount of stigma, and because the stigma is deep rooted in our society. It's not just about, it's not the corporates who have the stigma. It's our society. It's all the people. It's a sign of weakness. Shall I show this side of me? Because will it be held against me, etc. So what we've really noticed at Emotionally is that where the CEOs have really got involved and attended the sessions or really got involved and taken it on themselves, that's where we realized the companies have really picked up and are really doing well with it. And then I'm not saying the stigma is disappearing, but they're working with it and saying, hey, you can go out, you can speak to the counselors, you can speak to the therapists. We are not going to, we are not even taking your names. We are not even going to get any feedback from them. So, keeping it like that. So I think that's all been quite a learning process for us, as well as it's been a very interesting growth for us as well.
Thank you. Ms. Bilani, would you like to add something to that?
I think most of it is covered, and I just wanted to make one very small point is that when you look at what happened in the last 16 months, before this time, no one really focused on areas like this. Emotional and mental health was never talked about. I mean, I remember when I started out my career, there was some grievance handling number that we were given that if you have a problem, call this number. And it could be problem about anything. It could be from your provident fund to, you have a stomach ache or whatever. But now I think what happened was in the last 16 months, at least, early on, when we came up with this concept of Emotionally, and when we would go to companies and say, we do this, everybody would say, wonderful, great, what a great idea, how timely, very nice, all that. But the uptake of the services would not happen because I don't think they really understood the gravity of the issues related to something like this. There was a pandemic, etc., was very new. But
today, most medical insurances of companies do not cover emotional health. Okay, so it becomes either a burden on the company or it becomes a burden on the individual to pay, right? Whereas for physical illness, it's mostly covered by insurance, right? Although now, by law, almost every insurance company provides emotional health care under insurance. Companies should include this in their group medical insurances so that this whole aspect then gets more seriousness and gets covered under the insurance schemes as well.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
mean, Future generally as a company just ran a campaign with Shilpa Shetty and all these people saying that emotional health is as important as physical health. And so they are providing it. Companies need to provide it to their employees.
I mean, if you look
Thank
at you look at sports people and things like, people like that. I mean, there's so much emphasis in the last decade on, having a mental fitness person with them. And it's all about, at a certain level, at the top level for a sportsman, for example. I mean, at all levels, but more, and if I'm looking at the top, nobody's questioning their talent or their dedication. But it's how mentally fit are you, how strong are you, and so these these sporting bodies have been doing it. They obviously realize it is really really necessary.
Okay. So what we briefly discussed before, so I'll just come back to that. Like we can talk a little bit more about that. So what I want to talk about is unlearning and learning in a work from home setting to ensure a healthy workplace. So how should we go about that?
If I go back to what we sort of talked about it. So when you talk about learning or unlearning, I mean, I don't know, they're both sort of same sides of the, just two different sides of the coin. And one side is that it is exactly like working in the office. You should trust your people that they're doing the right thing, that they're over there. So trust has to be built from both sides. And you have to trust that this work is going to get done, the hours that go in, the breaks that may be required. Just that, I mean, just to put it in a very sort of just in a time frame kind of a thing. If you're working from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, then that should be the time that you're working. And then you have your break, you have your coffee break, you have this break, that break. I mean, that's a very important point. I can't understand why corporates are pushing people and saying, hey, just because you say people go back home.
We could look at the insurance companies giving full coverage of emotional health treatment, including counseling and therapy delivered, whether it's face to face or online. That's what I feel. And maybe Amit can add on to that now.
Mr. Bose,
Anita?
thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so one thing that, just to add to what Roma was saying, some of the things that, we are trying to do now is build awareness in schools and colleges about, in the student community about mental health. So if you look at some schools, they provide counseling services to their students, but this requires a progressive, much more structured approach, because just having a counselor in school is not enough. You need to really understand how the kids that are going from junior classes into senior classes, how is their emotional health building? Are they facing challenges of any sort? You have to understand in this situation the level of grief that people have gone through. And it's not just about, if you look at companies, people have lost employees. So when you have a situation where you've lost colleagues because of this situation, the kind of mental health challenges that creates and the grief that sets in is really severe. And we've had situations where grief counseling is required, and Roma has been doing a lot of grief counseling.
Grief counseling.
But we are not talking about it at all. If you really see in the media, wherever, they're talking about hybrid work and how it will affect, etc. But nobody's talking about providing support for grief. When we had the 2008 terrorist attack in Bombay, I had actually personally gone and supported some of my clients.
These things change dramatically when role models come on and freely admit that, look, I have depression, I am not crazy, I'm just Virat Kohli. Okay, I play cricket, but I have depression. Okay. And if it's only Deepika Padukone, whom I really like because she came out and said it, people say, "Arey, wo movie mein acting karne mein aise hi hota hai." Okay. But other role models like cricketers or teachers or things like that came out to admit publicly, saying, "Look, I have anxiety problems, but otherwise I lead a normal life." Right? Only then will people start believing that, look, normal people can have these problems and normal people can overcome these problems and they can lead a perfectly okay life. It's okay not to be okay in that sense, right? And frankly, closing, when we started this company, ours is a commercial venture, but also it's a service, right? And what we really would like to do is actually to provide as much support as possible. We are small today, but we'll grow. And if we get support, we will grow more. But to break this, to say this, look, it is okay not to be okay. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be stressed. It's okay to be depressed. There's nothing to be ashamed about it. And actually, we should ban all movies which show people like crazy, that come hair coming out, there in this thing. We should ban all those movies because that gives the wrongest impression of love.
Thank you so much. If anyone else wants to add something towards the closing comments.
So I would just like to add something that,
Yes, ma'am.
purely from a corporate perspective, and we've talked about the broad spectrum here, across the board, kids and older people and everything. I think from a pure corporate perspective, where we see most loss of productivity, it is very, very important to for CEOs to start talking about mental health. Just like Amit said, role models are very important in companies. Those are the role models. And I wrote an article sometime back that why should boards start caring about mental health of the employees? So I think if this is something that the boards also start monitoring and asking in terms of employee health, larger engagement. We talk about employee engagement, but we never talk about employee wellness and health. So we need to raise this up to the board level and say, let's start monitoring this. Let's start taking an interest in something like this, because we are responsible for the productivity of the company. So if the CEOs and the leaders of the company are seriously considering this change, they should start talking about it more openly. They should raise the level of awareness in the companies, and let people display their vulnerabilities to them and say, look, I need help. And there is a concept now called the mental health day off. So HR should provide policies which have this mental health day off, not just like I want to take a vacation.
Oh, and
call
you're
call
right.
it
Yeah.
out and say, this is, I'm taking a day off because of my mental health, I can't cope anymore. So those are some of the things that need to be done in companies, where seriousness needs to come. It's very easy to just talk about these things and say, yeah, we are doing everything, but get serious. Sorry, Lina, you were saying something.
No, no,
Yes.
you're absolutely right, and exactly in the same way that companies actually tackled the whole diversity and inclusion
Yes.
sort of, piece, first bringing in women and LGBTQ, etc. And for women, it was the same thing. Where were the role models? So when the role models came, we actually put out the role models in companies and said, hey, go out and win people over and tell people your stories and tell them what's happened and tell them how you've succeeded despite all the, all the sort of hindrances and things like that. So you have to really go out and talk much more about role models, and companies have to go on the same footing with this emotional and mental health like they did with the other DNI, sort of areas and avenues that we covered.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, Thank you so much, everybody. We are very grateful that you took out time. We know you're a very busy people, and this was very insightful. And I personally also am feeling grateful to be talking to you all, because the knowledge that you all have given me, the broad way of thinking, the perception and perspective, the new perspective, which is positive, even through these difficult times. So I've gained personally and professionally. So thank you so much.